Hi, this is Dr. Chris Doherty going over an anterior medial portal ACL reconstruction. So here we've localized our portal of spinal needle and we're clearing out our notch. So we know we can reach this over the top position with our standard guides. We're not going to do a notchplasty in this case as we don't need to. We've got more than sufficient room. The graft has been prepped on the back table. I'm planning on a 25 millimeter femoral socket, 30 millimeter intra-articular length, and 35 millimeter tibial tunnel. I've marked these out on my graft that I prepared on the back table as this is an allograft. The graft is suspended over a GFS Ultimate. Here we're bringing our guide pin into position. And we'll go ahead and place our femoral socket. So as I'm placing my pin, I'm going to make sure that I go all the way through the cortex, but I'm going to save my pin position because later I'm going to load my passing sutures on the eyelet of this pin. So once I like my pin, then I'll bring my reamers in and go ahead and create my femoral socket. Now for the graft itself, it's already prepared on the back table, looped over a GFS Ultimate. The suture tails on the graft are going to be marked to the length of this femoral socket. So here comes the drill bit for the GFS, so it'll pass out through the cortex. Now when I get all the way out to the cortex, I'm going to make sure that I seat this by pulling back on the drill so that I can accurately measure the width of my condyle. This will tell me the distance to mark on my graft in terms of how much I want up in the femoral socket, as well as marking on the loops so that I will know when I've passed that length of the loop across that condyle and out that cortex. So here we're sitting around a 45, maybe even a 43. That tells me the width of the condyle. So then when I place my socket, whether I see it to 20, 25 millimeters of depth, it'll tell me how much I need left in terms of loop length so that when I pass my loop, I'll know that I'm outside the cortex. So I'm going to seat it up to about a 25, so I've got a good, nice, deep socket. So if we're going with our prior measurement, there we are, going right up to about 25. We estimate around 42 to 45. So this tells me that I need at least a 20 millimeter loop to make sure when I pull through that I've got my mark at 20, telling me I've got out through the cortex so I can flip my button safely. If you want to give yourself an extra 3 to 4 millimeters, that's just fine. And I'm marking that from the button towards the graft on the strands so that I can see as I'm pulling this up and in that I'm keeping my loop strands nice and clean. I'm getting them up and through. My toggle sutures are going through. I'm pulling on the white and the black, but I'm not shortening up the loop yet, which is the blue and white sutures. But you'll see my 20 millimeter mark come in, and I've marked it again 20 millimeters from the button that we're currently looking at so that I know I'm outside the cortex and can go ahead and flip my button. I'm pulling on the graft itself, giving some resistance. And once that purple mark went through, you saw it go by. That was my 20 millimeter mark. Now I know I can go ahead and toggle my sutures, pull down on the graft hard, and seat that button against the cortex. Now, pulling on the graft, I'm going to go ahead and pull the graft up and in. There's my 25 millimeter mark, so I know I've got at least 23 up in that socket, and I'm firmly seated all the way up in my femoral socket. So now I'm pulling down on my graft. It's fully seated in the femoral socket. I put a peak CF screw of the tibia in extension, then back this up over a naked button to achieve my final fixation.